Hello, I am the H-Town Vet, and I would like to welcome you to our channel. Today's topic, holding the VA accountable using VA law. You may say, H-Town Vet, I'm not trying to hold the VA accountable. I'm just trying to get my benefits. Well then, I have a question for you. How can you get your benefits if the VA is not playing by the rules? You might be thinking to yourself, once I get my 100% permanent total, I have one of the highest protected ratings. And at that point, I will have less risk than somebody with a lower rating. Well, according to the Office of Inspector General, this is just not the case. In fact, in an audit conducted about 5 years ago, entitled Veterans Are Still Being Required to Attend Unwarranted Medical Reexaminations for Disability Benefits. While people may lie, the numbers don't. The IG's office found that the group that had the most unwarranted reexaminations were those with a disability rating that was permanent in nature and not likely to improve. That's right, the group with the most protections had the most reevaluations. But we here at the H-Town Vet are not here just to talk about the problem. We're here to bring solutions. And the two solutions that I offer you is understand VA law as it relates to your disability, and then get real familiar with how your local VA office works on a daily basis. Most of the time when we as veterans are dealing with the VA, we have a singular focus, winning our claim. But for the VA employees that are handling our claims, there's a lot more going on. As it relates to the claim process, these VA employees have to concern themselves with receiving claims, processing claims, and sending out decisions. While processing veterans' claims, these VA representatives have to first decide whether you're service connected, or do you deserve an increase, or should you be given a reduction or remain at the same disability rating. Once a veteran is given a rating increase, the amount of back pay has to be calculated. These factors can become more complicated when you have more than one rating specialist working on your claim. As a result, many times the VA claim process becomes very confusing and disorganized for the veteran and their representatives. Here at the H-Town Vet, we've come up with certain strategies and techniques that will help smooth out the claims process. In fact, there's one tool that the VA offers that will help facilitate this goal. To be clear, this tool does not have a singular function, but it's actually a multi-purpose tool, which is referred to as VA Form 21-4138, or Statement in Support of Claim. The main use of this form is to submit evidence in the form of buddy statements from fellow veterans that you served in the military with, family members that have firsthand knowledge of who you were before you joined the military and how you changed once you got out of the military. You can also use these forms to gather witness statements from co-workers and employers. Make sure all witnesses print and sign their name and leave a phone number that the VA can reach them at. And if you are a combat veteran, you can fill the statement out yourself because you are considered a reliable historian. Always make sure that you have the most up-to-date form when submitting your evidence. In part 2 of this video, we're going to show you how to use this form to win a VA claim. Now let's get into it. The best kind of VA claim is an evidence-based VA claim. On this slide, we're going to give you a brief overview on how an evidence-based claim works. The first thing is the focus of the evidence. In other words, what are you trying to prove with the evidence? Once you figure out the focus of your evidence, now it's time to organize the evidence. Once you've organized your evidence, you need to find the VA laws that support your evidence. Once you find the VA laws that's connected to each piece of your evidence, the next thing you need to do is submit a claim request that's supported by the evidence. If you complete these steps properly, you will eventually win your claim. Because if the VA denies your claim and you can prove that they're in error by VA law and your evidence, eventually they're going to have to approve your claim with a lot of back pay. Now that we've given you a brief overview of each concept in an evidence-based claim, we're going to go into more detail. Number 1, the focus of the evidence. For this video, we're going to use the hypothetical Mr. John Brown, who we covered in our last video about VA decision letters. In the last video, Mr. Brown won his case. Now we're going to go back in time and find out how Mr. Brown used an evidence-based claim to win his VA compensation disability. And as we just stated, the first thing he did was focus. And what he focused on was his goal, to win a 100% permanent and total rating for post-traumatic stress disorder. Once Mr. Brown decided what his goal was, he went on to the next step in an evidence-based claim. Number 2, organize your evidence. It's important to lay out your evidence in a way that would make sense to you and thus make sense to the VA. As you can see, Mr. Brown did just that. He took all of his evidence and put it in a chart. Then he grouped the evidence based on type. Now he's already thinking about what VA laws back up his evidence so that he can get to his goal of a 100% rating, permanent and total. Let's talk a little bit about the evidence that John Brown is considering submitting in his claim. From what we can tell from his DD-214, he was in the Gulf War during Desert Storm. At some point, he was injured during one of his missions and received the Purple Heart Medal. He actually got photos of his injuries while he was recovering. Not only will organizing your evidence help you win a claim, it'll also be crucial if you ever called in for a reevaluation. He also has a copy of his in-service military records, his medical records from the VA hospital, and private outside doctors. When you file a disability claim, you're going to have lots of paperwork, and the more disabilities you claim, the more paperwork. So you need several binders and bins to keep your information in. It would be a good idea to keep all your VA claim documents in one binder. If this video has been informative thus far, please like, share, and subscribe. Number 3, you have to have VA law that supports your evidence. Without the proper VA law related to your evidence, you're not going to win your claim unless the rating specialist made a mistake. An important point here, the VA is not going through all of your records to include medical records and in-service records. I've decided to do a part 2 to this video because of its length. So in part 2 to this video, I will go over the example of Mr. Brown's supported claim statement. But for now, let's go over a few of the rules and regulations that Mr. Brown used to tie his evidence into his claim. Now let's talk about the VA law that Mr. Brown used to back up his evidence. First, he looked for any evidence that showed that his condition was static and not likely to improve. Then he checked to see if he's had his current condition of PTSD for at least 5 years with no material improvement. While he did file a little early, by the time they went over his claim, he was at the 5-year point. The reason it is important to have your current rating for at least 5 years before you file a new claim is the VA would have to send you to at least 2 examinations before they could reduce your current rating. The next thing that Mr. Brown looked for in his medical records was there anything that said that his condition was permanent and not likely to improve. And finally, it would have been important for Mr. Brown to look through his medical records and look for any symptoms that reflected a 100% rating for post-traumatic stress disorder. We will go into more detail in part 2 of this topic. Number 4, your request. Your request should be supported by the evidence. Your evidence should be supported by VA law. For Mr. Brown and you, what is the request? Please be looking for our upcoming video, and we'd like to thank you for joining us.